In my life here on a Saturday afternoon. Hope everybody's having a good weekend, watching some college football games. Want to talk about a few things today. One is you probably saw the landmine story. It's gotten quite a bit of traction about a kind of bizarre story involving a baby swan that was ultimately killed by Fish and Game, and we only know about that because the Alaska State Parks posted about it on their Facebook page. Kind of a wild just story of what happened there and ultimately how it was dispatched by Fish and Game. And also want to talk about this story I did last week regarding leaked internal affairs tapes from the Anchorage Police Department and kind of what that story is about, what happened, my kind of take on all of it involving now Chief Case. At the time, it was Captain Case when he was an APD captain. So I'm going to talk about the Swan Gate story and then this APD story. First, I want to, of course, thank my sponsors. I want to thank John Quick down in the Kenai for being a sponsor of Landmine Live. John supports independent journalism, and I really appreciate John Quick's support for being a sponsor of Landmine Live. So thank you, John. And also one of our new sponsors, Talkeetna's Landing, owned by Ryan Sheldon. It's a place to get away during long winters, great hospitality in downtown Talkeetna with access to tire biking, fat tire biking, cross-country skiing, sled dogs. They even do a special discount for guests for flight seeing around the Alaska range. So you can get away for just $99 a night at talkeetnalanding.com, Ryan Sheldon. And I want to thank Ryan for being a sponsor, Talkeetna Landing, one of our new sponsors. If you mention me, he will charge you more. So don't mention me and you'll get a great deal. Mention me, you'll get still a good deal, but not as good of a deal if you don't mention Landfield, Jeff Landfield. A little bit of a joke there, but talkeetnalanding.com, check that out. There's some great deals up there in Talkeetna, especially for Alaskans in the wintertime if they want to get away for the weekend. So first thing I want to talk about is you probably saw the story if you're following Alaska politics. Also, I want to say real quick, John Boyle, the DNR commissioner, which is somewhat involved because part of this involves DNR, but this is not why he resigned. But he resigned yesterday. It was announced at 5 p.m. by the governor's office in a email. Any email at 5 p.m. on a Friday means it's something they're trying not to talk about. So it was a brief email. They appointed John Crowther, the deputy commissioner, as the acting DNR commissioner. And I don't know what happened. I mean, it sounds like John hadn't. Normally, if somebody's going to resign, people know about this weeks in advance, and there's a whole multi-paragraph thing about the person, and it was just a very matter-of-fact, thank you for your service. So, I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if he resigned on his own or if he was asked to resign or what's going on, but it seems like it was something they didn't really want to talk about. So that news came out yesterday. DNR Commissioner John Boyle out. Now there's Acting Commissioner John Crowther, who's the Deputy Commissioner. Interesting, Acting DNR Commissioner, Acting Revenue Commissioner after Crum left. There's a new Attorney General. He's been appointed. He's going to have to get confirmed. And then when they decide who the DNR Commissioner will be, the permanent and Revenue Commissioner, if it's going to be the people they have now or new people, they're also going to have to get confirmed during the next session. So also in the Revenue Department, there's no tax director. There's an acting tax director. There's no deputy commissioner after Fidel Lamani was let go months back. So there's a lot of kind of important positions that are unfilled right now in state government. You know, DNR is a big one. Revenue is a real big one. Some of these other positions, tax director, deputy commissioner. There's next year's going to be, there's a lot going on next year with price of oil potentially going down, this dividend problem, this dividend delusion, I call it, the cancer of the PFD and how that's going to impact the budget. It's an election year. So I don't want to go into that stuff right now. That's not kind of the live stream, but that's just an interesting kind of aside or update that John Boyle is now out as he's been there for he was there for over 2 years as DNR commissioner. So first story I want to talk about is you probably saw this. This was kind of a bit of a viral post by the Alaska State Parks, which is under the Department of Natural Resources. You pull this up here. So they posted, and now it's been deleted. It's been deleted. And I had like four or five people send me this. And it was a post on their page, and it was saying information needed, juvenile swan at Quartz Lake. And I guess this swan approached a ranger, and it was exhibiting unusual behavior, and it approached the ranger and laid down next to him and allowed it to be pet. And it's saying this behaviors indicated a swan had likely been illegally captured, domesticated, released, making it unable to survive in the wild. Despite efforts to find a licensed placement, the swan had been transported to Fairbanks Department of Fish and Game, where it was ultimately humanely euthanized. They dispatched look at this thing. Here's my question. Why would they post this? Like, why would they post a picture of this thing, this adorable little swan? I mean, I can see them saying, look, we don't want you to domesticate wild animals. I mean, that's okay. And they actually put a friendly reminder: if an animal approaches you in the wild, it's best to give space, even if it seems tame or curious. If you think it's uninjured or needs help, please contact Department of Fish and Game. And then it says, call this guy Wyatt Durner, which I tried to call it, but it went straight to voicemail. I bet you this guy got... The comments were brutal. I mean, the comments on the post were there's hundreds of them. Mainly, you know, so to save it, you had to kill it. And the other question I had, it's like, they say, don't approach it, don't touch him. But this thing approached the ranger, so he grabbed it and put it, the Swan, in the back of his car, his truck there. Look at this thing, for Christ's sake. It looks adorable. So I tried to call DNR. This is a Thursday night, I guess. I called DNR, I called Fish and Game. I wasn't able to really, nobody I talked to knew anything about it. The DNR people were aware of this post, and they were kind of like, "What? We don't know anything about that. We don't know who did that. What's going on?" So then I do this story, and they delete the post. Alaska State Parks under DNR deleted the post. They got rid of it because probably they were getting like brutally skewered in the comments. Again, I don't know. I mean, there's like something called media training. And I guess somebody who does a lot of this stuff, I mean, I would tell you never in a million years, if you have to kill an animal, fine. We kill animals all the time. You know, bears going crazy, it's killing people, or it's hurt, or a moose's leg's broken or something. Yeah, you gotta do that. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Even if it's the bird needs to for some reason, you know. But why are you going to post about it? Why are you going to post a whole narrative and then take a picture of this cute little bird, little swan here? In the back of the car and sitting over there. So this guy says, don't touch him, don't, but I guess the ranger, maybe he's got, I don't know, some training, and he picked it up, took it to Fairbanks. What's really interesting is I finally got a comment the next day from Fish and Game, and I added this to the story. And it's kind of funny because they partially blame the shutdown, government shutdown. So on October 23rd, this is a statement from Fish and Game I got the next day. Fish and Game staff were contacted by a Department of Natural Resources State Parks ranger regarding a swan that appeared habituated to humans. ADF&G's highly trained wildlife veteran, highly trained, they put that in there, veterinarian biologist staff concluded a physical examination and determined the swan was not a domestic breed, was significantly emaciated, and had imprinted on humans. Now, I don't know what an emaciated swan looks like. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert here, biologist, but that thing looks pretty good to me. I mean, maybe it looks a little thin. I'm not sure we call it emaciated. And also, what about the circle of life? Shouldn't this thing just be allowed to, if it's going to die, you know, some bear is going to eat it or some other animal? I don't think it looks emaciated. I mean, again, I'm not a biologist, so I guess I don't know what emaciated swan looks like, but the thing looks pretty excited. It looks pretty happy to me. It's standing there on the, you know. Anyway, so they say it's emaciated. ADF&G staff explored placement options by contacting multiple bird rehabilitation and wildlife facilities. Unfortunately, due to concerns about potential disease transmission and the inability to obtain the required U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service permit because of the federal government shutdown. So you need a permit to put this thing in a zoo or a bird sanctuary. Placement was not an option. So anybody who says I guess now if you say the shutdown is killing people, I've heard that before. I don't know if it's killing people, but it's definitely killing swans. Shutdown's definitely killed at least one baby swan. Subsequent necropsy. Hold on a second. Placement. With no alternative available, ADF&G staff humanely euthanized the bird. A subsequent necropsy revealed the bird had a fractured sternum. That's too bad. It would never be able to fly or migrate south. Given the severity of its condition, the bird was in extreme pain, and euthanasia was the most humane option. Now, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're making up the broken sternum thing, but I don't know. I mean, homie looks it's pretty happy right there. I mean, he's standing up. I mean, if the thing was really hurt, wouldn't it be kind of sitting down? You see like a hurt bird. It doesn't look, it looks hurt. I don't know. So that's that. Situation serves an important reminder when animals become habituated, their ability to survive in the wild is compromised. Alaska law prohibits intentionally neglectly feeding wildlife, as well as taking wild animals without a permit. Feeding and habituation increases the risk of it's a weird word, habituate. Human-wildlife conflicts can lead to injury or death of animals or people, and can increase the risk of spreading diseases to other, either wild or domestic animals or humans. Other thing here on the original DNR State Parks post, they say, if anyone has information about who may have possessed or released the swan, please contact, again, Wyatt Durner. His number's on there, cell phone number, and his email. Again, I tried to call it, but it went straight to voicemail. By the time I called, the post had been up for 3 or 4 hours, so I think I'm guessing Ranger Durner was getting his phone blown up. So, I mean, look, not the biggest story. It's a swan, who really gives a shit? But to me, it's like, why is State Parks posting about this? Why are they... Somebody thought, let's take a picture of this thing, and then let's send it to somebody at State Parks who runs the Facebook page, and let's post it and say, we tried, but little baby Swan couldn't make it, so we had Fish and Game kill it. I like how it's kind of a multi-agency, state agency effort to deal with this friendly swan and to ultimately transport it from, I don't know where Quartz Lake is. It's in Fairbanks somewhere. So, I mean, I'm guessing it was probably a bit of a drive. So, I mean, did homie like take it in the back of the rig and was probably having a great time? It's like, oh, it's warm. I'm in the truck. I'm going, maybe I'm going to a bird sanctuary. Maybe I'm, who knows, going get a snack. No, you're gonna get killed, little baby Swan. Now, again, they said it was her. They said it was sternum fracture. So maybe this was the best outcome. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying why post about it? I mean, if they wouldn't have done this, I would not be talking about this right now. I would not have written the story. People wouldn't have sent it to me. Many people, the original post. So this is just, a lesson. And for the folks watching who do social media, if you're working for the government or for a company or for, any organization, maybe just kind of think about what you post and maybe step back a little bit sometimes and say, is this a good idea? What's this going to accomplish? How are people going to react? Is it going to have the desire? I mean, they could have just said, hey, we've been aware, we've seen some birds, we've seen some things that indicate maybe domestication. So just a reminder, don't domesticate wild animals. That's not allowed. You have to have a permit. You shouldn't be doing that. Friendly reminder, Friday reminder. I think nobody would have thought anything about it. Most people probably wouldn't even have read it. So that is Swangate. Now it's interesting. The day after Swangate, Boyle did resign. So I mean, I hope the Swangate. I hope it wasn't the Swan that did in Boyle. I don't think that's the case. I have no information to suggest that. I think there was other things happening that led up to the resignation. But it is interesting that the day after the Swan story broke, Boyle's out at DNR. I don't think it's related, but I think we should just make that, for the record. Second story I want to talk about, I did this when did I put this story? It was last week. It was on the 17th, yeah. So, yeah, a little over a week ago. I got access to, and you've probably seen the story, it's on the landmine, it's leaked APD internal affairs tapes reveal major leadership schism on proposed DEI hiring practices. So I'm in possession of these tapes, leaked internal affairs tapes, which are pretty guarded. If you ever hear about police department, internal affairs is like the stuff where they deal with their own stuff and it's not supposed to get out. There's police doing stuff and sometimes they're doing bad stuff and they want to be able to take a look at themselves. And, the internal affairs department of a police, a lot of people don't like internal affairs guys because they're the ones who are looking at cops. They're the cops who are looking at cops. So I got a hold of these tapes and I want to be honest. I have more tapes about other things involving stuff at APD, which are not good. And I'm going to be doing stories on those tapes as well later. But in this case, there are 3 tapes involving Sean Case, who at the time was a Captain Case. This is in 2021. This is before Bronson. This is a few months before Bronson became mayor. A guy named Lieutenant Sean Henry and a guy named Captain, what's his name? What's his first name? No, it's Nolder. Captain Nolder. I forget his first name. So there's these 3 tapes, and this whole investigation stems from something else that I'm going to talk about, and then kind of what that was, involving some ideas Sean Case had at the time about hiring and recruiting, and then why this investigation later happened. Now, this was kind of a difficult one. I had these tapes. I had some other stuff, documents that were very complicated that told a big story about this investigation, and I had to listen to the tapes several times. I had to kind of piece together what was going on, and you listen every time you listen, you hear something else because it's they're pretty long tapes, or over 30 minutes each. And if you go to the Landmine story, the tapes are available at the bottom. They're on YouTube links. They're on the Landmine YouTube. You can listen to all the tapes. So essentially what happened was there was a meeting in 2021. Case, who was a captain, who was dealing with administrative stuff, which involved recruiting, met with this guy Henry, Lieutenant Henry, and this guy Abbott, Sergeant Abbott. Apparently it was a very long meeting. And in the meeting, Case had proposed some ideas about recruiting and hiring to get more diversity. And some of these ideas included having an off-site testing facility at Cook Inlet Tribal Council. So basically minority or people of color or women could test away from the APD office because there's a lot of white men around. So there's been some studies, he said, about women, and when they're around a lot of men, they might not test as well because of if they're nervous or stressed. And same thing, he's like, maybe people of color, maybe black people. Maybe if it's one black guy and there's 10 or 20 white guys, maybe he won't test as well, which, I mean, I think that's kind of bogus. But I mean, let's pretend that's true. Let's pretend if you're a woman or a non-white person and you're around white people and you test better when you're not around white men. Let's just say that's true. I don't believe that, but you still have to work around these people. I mean, APD is, I think it's 80% white or something. So I don't even know what that's about. So that was one thing. The other thing was saying, well, if somebody misses an appointment, maybe that's not, maybe they're busy, maybe they have a job, maybe they don't have a car. There was some other stuff about, if you fail the test, you have to wait 6 months. He was saying maybe certain people can wait 3 months and they can get invited back. Maybe if there's a lot of packets of qualified applicants and we have to rank the applicants and there's only let's say there's 60 qualified applicants and there's only 40 spots in the academy. If we don't have time to go through everything because we're short-staffed, maybe we have to prioritize some kind of minority or some applications to get more diversity. So that's what Case told these guys. Now, these guys in the meeting, Henry and Lieutenant Henry and Sergeant Abbott pushed back, and they were. And Henry says this in his interview. He says, "I'm not against diversity. I'm all about trying to increase diversity. I'm not against that. What I'm against is treating people differently, based on the color of their skin or their gender." And this was the pushback. So in his tape, Case was just basically, he said something like, he said that there was so much pushback from these guys in the meeting that they maybe heard 10% of what I was saying because they were so against even talking about it. So this meeting's over. Henry goes to this guy Nolder, his old captain, who's a captain, and I think he went to him and he says this in his tape that he was concerned about liability. And Case had kind of been proposing some. I think he might have said something like Case has gone crazy, and proposed some of this stuff. And he was going to him as kind of a captain and a mentor, and looking for advice. And he was wondering if he heard about any of this stuff. And then Nolder actually wanted to be kind of the peacemaker between Henry and Case, and he talks about this in the tapes. And he actually said it was easier for him they were trying to make one see the other person's side, but he said it was easier with Henry because he basically said he agreed with what Henry was saying on hiring. He's for diversity, but we shouldn't treat people differently. We should do things that, kind of neutrally based. We should try to do things to have more diversity, but we shouldn't be treating people differently. He agreed with Henry basically. So at some point, Nolder goes to Case to talk about this, and maybe he heard something different. Case heard something different, but at some point, Case got in his mind that Henry made a comment to Nolder that it's not my fault. All natives just get drunk and rape their women, and that's what Case had heard or thought he heard. Henry had told Nolder. So Case and Nolder talks about this in his tape. It sounds like Case went to Internal Affairs to go after Henry and say that he made this horrible, horrible comment about natives and we have to deal with that. And even Nolder told him, he's like, he never said that. He never said what you said he said. What Nolder said was there was a comment about rates of alcoholism and sexual assault. He says this in the tape. He says when Henry said that, Alaska Natives have higher rates of alcoholism and sexual assault and sexual abuse of minor. Nolder actually said, "Hey, you can't say that. Oh my God, don't ever say that. Don't even think that." He goes, "Maybe you're right. You're probably right about that, but we can't be saying that." He freaked out even at the idea of saying, even though he said it was true. So there was also some pushback. There talks about other people, other leadership at APD at the time were very against, some of Case's ideas about offsite testing and all this diversity DEI stuff. So this investigation happens, and that's why we have these tapes. And, this guy, Brian Ranger, he was Internal Affairs, and all these guys still work at APD. So I want to be very clear. What they said, what Case said, Henry said, there's no proof, there's no indication he ever said that. He still works there. I mean, if he would have said that, I don't think he'd be working at APD anymore. So all these people still work at APD. But this investigation happens, and they interview Henry, they interview Nolder, they interview Case, and this is 4 years ago. Now, I think the bigger question here is now that LaFrance won last year, she made Case chief. Now he's chief. So what I'm wondering is has he implemented, or is he trying not to implement these programs that he got so much pushback for 4 years ago when he was a captain, when it sounds like most of the leadership were against, not against diversity, not against trying to find diversity, against treating people differently based on the color of their skin. Now Case he pushes back and says, oh, this is not what they're saying it is. This is not, we're maintaining rigorous standards and high standards. And he's trying to kind of, I think, maybe have it both ways. But the tapes are really interesting, and you should, if you have the time, listen to them. They're on Landmine YouTube. You can go to Alaska Landmine YouTube channel. You can go to the story here. It's Landmine leaked internal APD internal affairs tapes reveal major leadership schism on proposed DEI hiring practices. And then, if you go down here, they're on the YouTube as well, but here's the case interview. It's kind of like wild when you hear it. Here, let's see if we can, it's kind of like wild. It's almost like a movie. Is that the right? Where's my, that should be the right. Why can't we hear that? Huh. That's interesting. Well, let me just try to do that. Wonder why. One second here, folks. I'm going to try to open this thing up on YouTube. I wonder if it's not playing because it's in the. My volume control is turned up here. Let's just check this out real quick here. Sorry about this, folks. I want to again thank our sponsors, TalkeetnaLanding.com. Great cabins up in Talkeetna, Ryan Sheldon, and John Quick out there in Kenai for supporting independent journalism. Thank you, John Quick, for being a sponsor. And folks, if you want to sponsor the Landmine live stream or the podcast, get a hold of me. Happy to share with you information about that. I think there's something wrong with my Rodecaster because this should be playing, and it's not playing, and I don't really want to troubleshoot that right now, but that's interesting. I wonder if that's maybe because I'm recording or Anyways, check out the tapes. You can listen to them. They're very interesting. They're very it's kind of like getting, putting the curtain back and getting behind the scenes and hearing people talk in a way that they aren't normally going to talk to the public because they're being, they don't think these tapes are ever going to come out. So, I mean, my take on it is Case was pissed off that these guys pushed back on him. He didn't like what Henry did, and Henry went to somebody else to talk about it, an older guy. So Case was like, well, let's use the internal affairs process to come after Henry, which didn't work because Henry's still there. And even the guy who allegedly Henry said this comment to was like, he never said that. I want to be very clear. He didn't say that. In fact, I don't think there should have been an internal affairs investigation. He said I did a spot correction on the comment that even though he agreed with, he said he agreed with what he said about, he said Alaska Natives had higher rates of sexual abuse and, alcoholism. And Henry was saying his point, I think, was more of a cultural. He's like, we can't deal with problems that are existing now from people that are applying. He's like, we have to go back and look at the culture of like why people, why these things happen to different groups, and let's try to fix that. I mean, it sounds like he's saying the right thing, and he's trying to, fix some problems and make things better. So I think Case was pissed off that he got all this pushback. At some point, there was a meeting where, it sounded like after the meeting, somebody had said, their interpretation of, this is another meeting that he had, their interpretation of the meeting was Case didn't want to hire white guys anymore. So there was, I think, this word spread internally among leadership and then the rank and file, the regular officers, and I think Case just basically he got shut down on this stuff 4 years ago. But now he's chief, so it's like it's fair to ask, what's he doing? Is he implementing different practices? Obviously, I don't think him and Henry are going to be hanging out too much after that whole thing 4 years ago, and some of the other people in leadership. There's definitely a debate or a schism here on this DEI stuff. So I have more tapes. I'll give you some teasers. One of them involves an internal affairs investigation last year about a woman who was working at APD as a mental health counselor, who was working previously at a nonprofit where she was investigated for sleeping with some of the minors. Turns out that wasn't proven. But then she goes to work at APD. One of the kids who was now 18, who was at this deal, it was a nonprofit deal for substance abuse and mental health. He's working for the dad. He's working for her dad. Left that out. They're supposed to go shooting. She leaves the gun in the car, his car, her handgun. He goes crazy. He threatens to kill himself and his dad. She calls the dad, not the cops. The cops get involved. Whole thing blows up. Turns out it's her gun. She's working at APD. That's a wild one. It's a really wild. I'm kind of piecing through all the tapes and all the interviews and the documents. I mean, that's a pretty wild one. She was working for the mobile intervention team, which was, by the way, a kind of a brainchild of Case. And when after the investigation started, a couple days later, she resigned. Her resignation letter it went to Case. So this is kind of like, mental health professional per the mobile intervention team is hanging out with, she's in her 30s, hanging out with an 18-year-old who was a client of this nonprofit when he was 17. And it sounds like he was telling his dad and people that they were dating. I mean, the whole thing is very convoluted, but the fact that she left her gun in his car and then he was going to threaten to kill himself and his dad with her gun, sounds like a great person to be, dealing with mental health, being on the mobile intervention team. Unbelievable. There's another one where a guy who, long-time APD employee, was kind of going loose with the credit card or the APD money, buying all kinds of personal stuff, computers, electronics, clothes, and that was another internal investigation. And, you haven't heard about this stuff until now, until I'm going to do stories on it, but they keep this. It seems like the culture at APD is just keep stuff very quiet. Don't deal with it internally, push people out quietly. Don't actually, inform the public about some of the stuff that's happening with an APD. Just deal with it very quietly internally, and then make it. And APD also has a long history of people they fire end up suing them and then winning. So maybe their whole thing is they're nervous about that, so they just want to deal with stuff as quietly as possible and make people resign and keep it. Don't tell the public. So now there's the internal affairs stuff's fascinating because it's like it's an insight into an organization, into the police organization, in this case APD, where the curtain is totally pulled back and you're getting a glimpse into things that the public never sees. And I'm of the belief, obviously, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I think it's very important to be transparent and open with the public. And APD, they're a nightmare. Even getting records requests, if you ever dealt with trying to get records from the APD, it's very, very difficult, and it's very time consuming. And other thing, it's kind of interesting. So I'm doing this story, the first story I just talked about. There's a page on APD, and it's a page of the command staff, and it has phone numbers for a bunch of lieutenants and captains and sergeants, and there's quite a few numbers in there. I probably called 10 or 15 numbers for direct lines, and not one of them, in this first story, not one of them answered the phone. And I'm calling their direct lines, I'm calling the main lines, I'm calling the main line for internal affair. It's like nobody, if you call 311, it takes a while to even get somebody. So it's kind of very telling that you call, 15 or 20 APD numbers, direct lines of captains and lieutenants and sergeants, and nobody answers the phone. And it's not like it goes straight to voicemail. They're ringing. Not great. It's like same problem exists in the city. Try to call, if you ever have some time, sit down and just try to call different city departments or state departments. Just pick up the phone. Call the commissioner's office of a state department, or call the, public safety, or call the dog catcher, or call just call numbers, call the finance department, just call direct numbers, call numbers to departments and divisions in the state and the city. And you will find that it's very, very, very difficult to get someone to answer the phone, which is not good. Part of that, I think, it could be potentially COVID. People are, work culture has changed, but I remember a long time ago, it was like very normal during working hours. You pick up the phone, you call somebody, they answer the phone. At least somebody answers the phone. Maybe the person you need isn't available, you leave a message, but there'd be at least somebody answering the phone, or the phones at these divisions and departments and city agencies and state agencies. Trust me, just if you have 15 minutes, just start looking, go on the State of Alaska website. There's a list of numbers, go on the city website, call different departments. I'm telling you, good luck getting someone to answer the phone. It's not great. It's not great. So that's the kind of the two stories today. The Swan situation, which is kind of just loose that they posted that. The Alaska State Parks, this whole internal affairs thing with Case and Nolder, Captain Nolder, and Captain Case, now Chief Case, and Lieutenant Henry. And they all still work there. They're all still working there. Must be a weird Christmas party for the people at APD this coming December. And then John Boyle, out as DNR commissioner, very abruptly was announced resignation last night at 5 p.m., which means Friday night news dump. That is not something they want to talk about. That was just something they wanted to, get past. So, but it's out there. John Crowther now is the deputy commissioner, is now the acting commissioner. So session's 3 months away, and it's going to be here very quickly. Pretty soon we got, Thanksgiving a month away, and then Christmas, and then boom, it'll be January, and we're going to be going back to Juneau for the session. Governor's race next year, Senate race next year, U.S. House race next year, and then 40 House seats and 10 Senate seats. A lot of people in the House we've already talked about are already running for the Senate seat. So a lot to talk about next year, a lot to discuss, a lot of content, a lot of landmine. Great full employment for me next year with the landmine. And the Alaska, by the way, the Alaska Political Report. If you haven't got or don't get the Alaska Political Report, get a hold of me. It's another business I run. I got Neil Steininger working on the budget stuff. We have a fascinating kind of breakdown of state budget, state issues, legislative issues. We get the calendars every month of the governor and the commissioners. We actually have a new service, an add-on, Alaska Political Report Federal. I'm working with a guy in D.C., and we're doing a federal report of basically the delegation and everything happening in D.C. that relates to Alaska. It's a really, really good newsletter, and that's also coming out once a week. In addition to the political report, it's Political Report Federal. It's an add-on. So get a hold of me if you haven't got that. Happy to send you some samples of it. It's really, really, really good information on the regular political report and then the federal of what's happening in Alaska, what's happening with the budget, what's happening in Juneau, what's happening in the political world, what's happening with the campaign finance reports, the FEC, the federal ones, the state ones, the APOC. We break it all down for you. So we do all the work, and then you can go in there and easily read who raised what, where did it come from, where's the big donors, where's the big expenditures. It's stuff that takes a long time. It's not, it's kind of monotonous work, but we do the work for you, and then you can go through and read all this stuff, and it's great service. People like it. We have a rate. It's $12.99 a year for the political report. We have a discount rate of $9.99 for nonprofits and government entities. And then we have the federal report, which is an add-on price, which I'm happy to talk about with you. So get a hold of me, Jeff at akpoliticalreport.com, if you want to learn about the report or get some previous editions. Happy to share that with you. I also want to one more time thank our sponsors, John Quick out there in Kenai. Most of Talkeetna. John Quick and Kenai for sponsoring Landmine Live and being a sponsor. John supports independent journalism, and really want to thank him for his support. And then obviously Ryan Sheldon, Talkeetna's Landing. They're doing all kinds of stuff. They got biking, cross-country skiing, sled dogs. They got some great cabins. Take a little break. Take a weekend off. It starts at $99 a night. Mention me, and it's going to be a little more money. Mention Jeff Landfield. He's going to charge you a little more. And then there's all kinds of stuff going on up in Talkeetna is a fun place. I mean, Talkeetna is a great place, especially in the winter when the tourism kind of dies down. It's a fun place to go. So check out the cabins, talkeetnalanding.com, Ryan Sheldon. Folks, I want to thank you. Have a good weekend. Tomorrow's Sunday. Hope you guys watch the football. There's going to be a lot going on. Stay tuned to Landmine Live. I really appreciate you guys watching the live streams here. And if you want to sponsor, get a hold of me. If you want to buy an ad in the Landmine, if you want to support the Landmine, what I'm doing, please go to alaskalandmine.com/subscribe, and really appreciate any kind of donation you can make for what we're doing here. Thanks.